Modern life tells us challenges are interruptions. They're like detours, blocks in the way of where we're trying to go. But that whole way of seeing things might be backwards. The ancient Stoics had this idea, this paradox. They said the obstacle isn't in the path, the obstacle is the path. Marcus Aurelius wrote that down. He was a Roman emperor. He kept a private journal. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That idea changes everything. It turns a hardship from a problem into the substance. It becomes how you grow. So there are principles here, a toolkit for changing how you engage with difficulty, turning frustration into fuel. It comes down to perception, how that creates reality. And loving your fate, that's like a resist, that might be the exact training you need. So what's one challenge you have right now? One you might be misreading completely. Stoicism starts from this basic, kind of radical premise. Nothing is good or bad by itself. The event is neutral. It just exists, and then our mind almost instantly puts a name on it. We call it a disaster or an injustice or a personal attack. That label isn't the event. It's our judgment of the event, and that judgment, that's where our power actually is. That's the core of the Stoic way of seeing things. Epictetus said this. He was born into hardship. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." The feeling of being blocked, that disturbance, it doesn't come from the outside thing. It comes from inside, from the view you decided to take. This is the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us. Our opinions, our impulses, what we want, what we avoid. Everything else isn't up to us. Our body, our property, our reputation, what other people do. The Stoic move is to stop putting energy into that second column, the things not up to you, and focus it all on the one thing that is. Your judgment. So when you call something an obstacle, you've already chosen. You've framed it as an enemy, something to be beaten. But if you refused that label, if you saw the same event not as a roadblock but as raw material, take a modern example. You get critical feedback at work. The event is neutral, words on a page. Perception one, the common one, calls it an attack. It becomes a blow to your identity, a sign you're not good enough, an obstacle to your peace of mind. You might spend days feeling defensive or angry. Perception two, the Stoic lens, sees that same feedback as data. It's just information about how your work is being seen. This perception asks, what here is useful? What can I learn? Where is the gap between what I meant and what happened? In this view, the criticism isn't a block in your path. It becomes the path. It shows you the next step to take. The obstacle didn't change, your perception of it did. And that changed everything about your experience and what you could do next. So here's a small experiment, a way to practice this. Think of one challenge you're facing right now, a difficult person, a stalled project, a goal that feels out of reach. Now, write down 3 alternative, neutral interpretations of that same situation. Strip away the emotional label. Describe it plainly, like a scientist watching an experiment. Just the facts. This isn't positive thinking, it's accurate thinking. You're not trying to convince yourself it's wonderful. You're just seeing it for what it is, without the story of obstacle you've attached to it. When you do that, you start to see the path that was hidden inside the apparent block. Loving the obstacle, that's the next step. Amor Fati, love of your fate. It's not just accepting it. It's not saying, fine, I'll deal with this. It's an active embrace, looking at what happens, the hard things especially, and saying, this is for me. This is necessary. This is good for me. Nietzsche talked about this later, but it's a Stoic idea. Marcus Aurelius wrote about accepting the universe, this grand tapestry. He said to welcome every event, because what happens to you was woven into your existence from the start. He looked for the good, the lesson, in every thread. Even the dark ones, the rough ones, that changes the path. If you're just enduring a challenge, you're still fighting it. There's friction. But if you choose to love your fate, to embrace it, the friction goes away. The path isn't something happening to you anymore. You're walking it with intention. The rock in the road stops being a block. It becomes the substance of the road. The thing that gives you traction. There's Seneca. He was a wealthy advisor in Rome. Then he was exiled, sent to a remote, harsh island. By any measure, a disaster. His career was over, his comfort gone, his reputation shattered. The ultimate obstacle, but Seneca chose Amor Fati. He didn't just accept exile, he embraced its possibilities. He turned those lonely years into a period of deep reflection and productivity. He wrote his most profound letters and essays there. He used the silence, the isolation, the hardship as fuel. The exile, the apparent end of his path, became the path. It forged writings that would inspire people for 2,000 years. So think of a past setback. Something that felt like a door slamming shut. A job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, a plan that fell apart. Now, looking back, can you see one way it served your growth? Did it steer you toward a different opportunity? Did it build a resilience you use now? Did it teach you something vital about yourself? The goal isn't to pretend it didn't hurt. It's to see how the obstacle became part of your terrain, shaping who you are now. That recognition is the first step toward loving your fate, walking your path not with resentment but with a quiet gratitude. Stoics work on wanting what actually happens. That idea can sound backwards when you first hear it. It's not about giving up or settling. It's about retraining something deeper, your internal compass. They call this the discipline of desire and aversion. Desire is what you reach toward. Aversion is what you push away. Having preferences isn't the problem. The problem is when those preferences turn into demands. When you need a specific thing to happen out in the world, like getting a promotion or having everyone like you, that's when you set yourself up. Because those outcomes aren't fully yours to control. So the discipline of desire is about wanting only what is up to you, wanting to act with courage or with justice or with patience. And the discipline of aversion asks you not to run from events you've decided are bad, not to avoid criticism or discomfort or uncertainty, because in trying to avoid them, you give them power over you. Epictetus taught this constantly. He said freedom comes not from fulfilling your desires, but by removing desire. He meant desire for externals. When you stop demanding the world arrange itself for your comfort, you become unshakable. The obstacle, the thing you are trying to avoid, it loses its sting. It becomes just another event, and your job is to meet it with your best response. Take a common frustration now. You're stuck in traffic, you want a clear road, you want to be on time, and you have an aversion to this delay, to this wasted time. So the traffic jam becomes this massive obstacle. It ruins your mood. Now apply the discipline. Your desire shifts. It's no longer for a clear road which you can't control. Your new desire is to act with patience, to be present, right here in this car. Your aversion shifts. You're no longer fleeing from the reality of the delay. You accept it as the current condition. Suddenly, the traffic jam isn't an obstacle to your peace. It becomes the arena for practicing it. It becomes the path. The time becomes usable for reflection or just for being. The external event didn't change. Your desires and aversions did. And that changed everything. So here's a small exercise. Identify one thing you intensely want right now. Make it an external outcome, a specific job offer, a particular reaction from someone, a goal you feel you must hit. Write it down, then beside it, reframe that desire. Shift it from the outcome to your own action. Instead of desiring the job offer, desire to prepare for the interview with thoroughness and clarity. Instead of desiring their approval, desire to communicate with honesty and kindness. This reframing puts the goal within your control. It turns the waiting, the uncertainty, the potential for disappointment from an obstacle into the training ground. The path isn't about reaching a distant finish line. It's found in the quality of each step you take, no matter what the terrain is ahead. The Roman Stoics were good at this, focusing on the task right in front of them, even when everything was falling apart. A senator plotting, a plague in the streets, and they'd write about the duty of the moment. Sweeping the floor, writing a letter, listening, it seems superhuman, but it shows you something about frustration. Frustration isn't really about the thing you're doing. It's about the story you're telling yourself about the future. You have this plan in your head, a smooth path, then something gets in the way. That feeling of being blocked, it lives in that future you just lost. It doesn't exist here, in the present, where your only job is to take the next step. Marcus Aurelius said it, do every act as if it were your last. He wasn't being morbid. He was cutting away the distraction of what comes next. Leave the future to itself, he said. You'll meet it with the same reason you use right now. Your power is only in the now. That smooth path you imagined, that's the ghost. The present action, no matter how small, that's the reality. When you latch onto the ghost, you feel frustrated. When you pour yourself into the reality, the obstacle just dissolves. It becomes the terrain, the ground you're walking on. Think of an athlete with a serious injury. A torn ligament, a broken bone, the obstacle is clear. Their imagined future, the season, the records, it vanishes. That's where the despair is, in that lost future. But the path is in the present. It's in the first painful session of physical therapy, the meticulous attention to each exercise, each repetition today. It's in studying the game from a new angle while they heal. The injury, the massive obstacle, becomes the path. It forges a deeper understanding, a patience they never had. A mental toughness that outlasts the physical one. Their focus shifts from the lost season to the present moment work, the work of rebuilding, and in that focus, frustration has no place to stand. This applies to any stalled project. You want to write a book, but you're staring at a blank page. The obstacle is the finished book that isn't there. That's a future ghost. The path is the present sentence. Just write one true sentence, then another. Writer's block exists when you're looking at the mountain. It vanishes when you're placing one stone. So here's a challenge. For the next hour, choose one activity. Your work, a chore, a conversation. Pour your entire attention into just that. When your mind drifts to what's next or what should be easier, bring it back to the sensation, the action, the detail of right now, the texture of the dish you're washing, the specific words you're reading, the sound of the other person's voice. Notice if the sense of impediment begins to soften, that background frustration. The path isn't somewhere up ahead waiting to be clear. It's right here under your feet in the quality of your very next action. A sword gets its strength from fire. From the hammering, the heat, the sudden cold water. Character is forged the same way. It's made in difficulty. Without resistance, virtues are just ideas. Untested, courage isn't courage until there's something to be afraid of. Patience isn't patience until you have to wait. The obstacle gives you the context. The friction, it's where you practice, where you prove what you're made of. That's the fifth principle, seeing obstacles as training grounds, the gym for your character. Seneca wrote about this. He said fire tests gold, adversity tests strong people. You don't know what you're made of until you're in the heat of it. The easy times, the smooth path, they don't show you much. They're comfortable, but when a plan falls apart, when you face criticism or failure, that's when your mettle is tested. That's when you see your strength. And you build it. The obstacle isn't blocking your path to virtue. It is the path. Think of a professional challenge, a project you poured yourself into that failed. Your first reaction might be to see it as a setback, a waste of time, a mark against you, an obstacle, but shift the frame. See it as training. That failure, if you engage with it, trains resilience. It asks you to get back up. It trains humility. It shows you the limits of what you know or the unpredictability of things. it trains problem solving. You get a rich dataset of what didn't work, which is often more valuable than knowing what did. It might train justice, honesty. How do you talk about the failure with your team? Do you blame others or take responsibility? A successful project might teach you less. It confirms what you already know, but a failed one, that obstacle. It's a comprehensive gym session for your character. It trains multiple virtues at once under real pressure. So here's a prompt. Look at one current difficulty in your life. A strained relationship, a financial pressure, a health concern, a creative block. Now ask yourself, which specific virtue is this difficulty training in you right now? Is it training patience as you wait for something outside your control? Is it training courage as you move forward with fear? Is it training temperance, managing your impulses, or wisdom, seeking the deeper lesson? Naming the virtue changes your relationship to the hardship. It stops being a meaningless burden. It becomes a purposeful workout. You're not just sitting in traffic, you're in the patience gym. You're not just having a difficult conversation. You're on the courage mat. The obstacle is the equipment, and each rep, each moment you meet it with intention, it makes you stronger in a way smooth sailing never could. We started believing life was supposed to be easy, that somewhere there's a version of our journey without friction, without setbacks, where everything just clicks. That expectation of a smooth path, it's a modern myth, and it might be the biggest source of our daily frustration, because when we expect ease, every bump feels like a personal offense. Every delay feels like the universe broke a promise it never made. Stoicism is built on realism, not pessimism. It prepares you for the friction by expecting it. Expecting it as a natural part of the journey. The imagined smooth path is the real obstacle to your peace, not the difficulties themselves. It's the ghost you're chasing that makes the real terrain seem so harsh. Epictetus put it plainly. He said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish. Wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." Another Stoic, Musonius Rufus, taught that we should train our minds to expect troubles. Not to live in fear, but to remove the shock, the sense of injustice when they arrive. He said difficulty is the common lot of humanity. To be surprised by it is to be unprepared for life itself. That's the core of Stoic preparation. You don't wait for the storm to learn how to sail. You learn because you know the sea is never permanently calm. Think of a skilled sailor. They don't curse the wind when it changes. They don't shake their fist at the waves. They understand these forces are part of the sea's nature. Their skill isn't in creating perfect conditions. It's in reading the conditions that exist, adjusting the sails, and using the very wind that seems to oppose them to move forward. Calm seas don't make skilled sailors. They only provide a temporary rest. The skill, the strength, the deep knowledge of the craft is forged in the rough water. The obstacle of the storm is what reveals the path through it. Now apply this to your own life. Where are you holding onto an expectation of a smooth path? Maybe in your career, you believe that if you work hard enough, you should be recognized and promoted on a clear, upward trajectory. Any office politics, any unfair oversight feels like a violation of that rule. Or maybe it's in your personal growth. You start a new habit like exercise or meditation, and you expect linear progress. A bad day, a moment of slipping back into old patterns feels like a failure. Instead of a normal part of the process, that expectation is the silent wait. It's the voice that whispers this shouldn't be happening to me, and that voice creates a secondary layer of suffering. On top of the primary event, the event might be challenging, but your belief that it shouldn't be challenging, that's what truly hurts. So here's a small exercise. Take a moment and write down one specific expectation of an easy path that you're carrying right now. It could be as simple as, I expect my morning to go smoothly once I've made my plan. Or as significant as, I expect that if I am a good person, I will not face serious hardship. See that expectation on the page. Acknowledge it for what it is, a wish, a hope. Not a law of nature, and then consciously release it. You are not giving up on your goals. You are giving up on the fairy tale that the road to them will be without stones. You are trading the illusion of a smooth path for the real, solid, manageable ground of the path that actually exists, with all its rocks and turns. That ground is where you find your traction. That is the only path there ever really was. Stoicism asks us to separate the work from how it's received. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. You put your energy into something, your skill, your attention, and then you naturally look for something back, for validation, for a good outcome. You link your worth to that result. If it goes well, you feel complete. If it doesn't, you feel less, like the effort was wasted. That creates a fragile way of living, one that depends completely on things outside your control. The Stoic approach is a kind of detachment. It's not about not caring. It's about caring deeply, but in the right place. You care about the quality of your effort, the integrity of the action itself, the virtue in the attempt. You detach from the specific outcome that comes after, because that outcome depends on 1,000 factors you can't control. The market, someone else's mood, just chance. Your job is the attempt, the art of trying, doing your absolute best with focus and good character, and then letting the chips fall. When you internalize this, external things, rejection, indifference, failure, they stop being obstacles to your peace. They become just data, feedback on a process you engaged with fully. The path stops being about reaching a specific destination. It becomes about the quality of your walk. Epictetus used the image of a banquet. He said, "Remember, you ought to behave as at a feast." Someone passes you a dish, you take a polite portion, it goes by, you don't chase it, you don't demand it return. He applied that to actions too. Play the game well. Throw the dice skillfully, but if the result isn't what you wanted, accept it with grace. Your worth as a player isn't in winning the hand, it's in how you played it. The winning or losing is external. The skill and fairness you showed is entirely yours. Think of an artist. They spend months on a painting. They pour their technique, their emotion, their vision onto the canvas. They do their absolute best work, then they show it. The market might love it. It might sell for a high price, or it might be met with silence. Critics might dismiss it. That commercial reception is a storm of external factors, trends, tastes, timing. If the artist tied their entire sense of value to that reception, the silence would be devastating. An obstacle that blocks any future creation. But if the artist practices that detachment, the path is clear. The value was in the act of creation itself. In the problem solving, the discipline, the expression, the market's response is just weather. It doesn't change the substance of the walk. The artist's path was the daily showing up at the easel. That was the real work. The sale or the review is just something that happens afterward. It doesn't define the journey. So think of a time you did your best and the world called it a failure. You prepared thoroughly for a presentation that was poorly received. You gave a relationship your honest effort and it still ended. You trained for a race and didn't finish where you wanted. Look back at that moment, but not at the outcome. Look at the effort itself. Can you find one value that existed purely in that effort, separate from the result? Maybe it was the discipline you built by preparing, the courage it took to be vulnerable, the resilience you found when you got back up. That value is yours forever. No outcome can take it away. That's the core of the path. The obstacle of a bad result only exists if you believe the path was about the result. If the path is the effort, then every effort, regardless of outcome, is a step forward. Don't just face the obstacle, use it. That's the alchemy of action. Stoicism isn't about waiting. It's about turning every situation, especially the hard ones, into the substance of your progress. The right response to a barrier isn't to complain it's there. It's to ask one question: what can I build with this? The obstacle becomes fuel, a puzzle that needs a new solution. A constraint that sparks a different kind of creativity. That's the heart of Marcus Aurelius's line. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't saying the obstacle vanishes. He meant to see it differently, as raw material. You don't walk around the boulder, you study it, you learn what it's made of. You might carve steps into it, or use it as a foundation for something new. The boulder, by blocking the old path, forces you to make a new one. And in that act of creation, you become more capable than if the path had been clear all along. There's a powerful example in history with the Stoic Cato the Younger. He lived during the fall of the Roman Republic. His lifelong political goal was to preserve the old system against the rising power of figures like Julius Caesar. By every conventional measure, Cato failed. He was defeated repeatedly. His cause was lost. He faced exile and, in the end, chose his own passing when capture was certain. But in his defeats, Cato performed that ultimate alchemy. He used his failures as material, his unwavering integrity in the face of loss, his refusal to compromise his principles even when outnumbered. That transformed his political defeats into something far more enduring. They became powerful symbols of Stoic resolve. His life and the manner of his passing weren't seen as a tragedy by later Stoics. They were studied as a masterclass in using opposition to forge an unbreakable character. His legacy was shaped not by his victories, but by how he used his obstacles. The impediment became the way. This principle is practical for us now. It moves you from a mindset of complaint to a mindset of construction. Think of a common frustration. You're working on a collaborative project, and a team member is consistently unresponsive. The passive response is to lament their behavior, to feel blocked, to wait. The alchemical response is to use this obstacle as material. What can it teach you about communication? Maybe it forces you to document everything with crystal clarity, a skill that will serve you forever. Maybe it pushes you to develop more patience or to find new ways to build rapport. The unresponsive person becomes the puzzle. Your constructive actions to solve it become the path forward. So here's a challenge. Take one current frustration. It could be a logistical headache, a creative block, a difficult dynamic with someone. Now, for just 5 minutes, brainstorm. Don't think about how to remove the frustration. Think about how to use it. What one immediate, small action can you take, using this very situation as your starting material? If the frustration is a lack of resources, your action might be to get brilliantly creative with the few resources you have. If it's a criticism, your action might be to extract one piece of usable feedback and implement it today. The goal isn't to solve the whole problem right now. The goal is to perform the alchemy, to prove to yourself that the obstacle isn't inert, it's active. It's waiting for you to turn it into your way forward. Standing on a mountaintop, the world looks different. Those roads that felt so urgent down below, they're just thin lines. The buildings that seemed so huge, they're small shapes. That's the view from above. It's a mental shift. You zoom out. You see your life, your problems, not from the ground, but from a distance. The goal isn't to make things trivial. It's to see their true proportion, to see how one sharp obstacle fits into the whole landscape of your journey. Marcus Aurelius did this. He'd write reminders to himself to look down from a high place on all the gatherings and journeys of people, to see the whole sweep of time, to see generations as brief flickers against eternity. He saw the earth as a point in space and your own concerns as even smaller. This wasn't nihilism. It was context. A roaring river is terrifying when you're in it, but from a high cliff you see its whole course, where it came from, where it's going. Your struggle is just one part of its flow. The obstacle isn't less real from that height, but its power to overwhelm you diminishes. You see it as a feature of the terrain, not the whole world. Take a modern stress, a sudden job loss. From the ground, it feels catastrophic. Your identity is shaken. Financial fears are immediate. The future is blank. It consumes everything. Now practice the view. Zoom out mentally. see this not as an isolated disaster, but as one point on your timeline. A timeline that spans decades. Remember other challenges you've navigated. See yourself not just as an employee of one company, but as a person with relationships, skills, curiosities. A capacity for resilience that's been tested before. Zoom out further. See the countless others right now across the city, the country, navigating similar transitions. You are part of a shared human experience of change. From this vantage, the job loss doesn't vanish as a difficulty, but it is framed. It becomes a significant event, but not the definition of your story. It's a bend in the river, not its end. The path forward becomes visible because you can see more of the landscape. This reveals a truth. The obstacle that feels like a wall when you're pressed against it from a higher view, it's often a necessary turn in the path. It's what directs the flow. Without the rock in the stream, the water wouldn't carve the canyon. Your challenge, seen from above, isn't a random error. It's part of the geography that gives your journey its shape. So a simple practice. For the next 2 minutes, take one current worry. Close your eyes if it helps. Mentally zoom out. First, see the problem from the end of this week, then from the end of this year. Then imagine looking back on it from 5 years in the future. What might you have learned by then? How might it have changed your direction for the better? Finally, take the cosmic view. Imagine the Earth turning in space. Continents, oceans, billions of lives, each with their own stories of struggle and growth. See your single concern as a small, human-sized event on this vast planet. When you return to ground level, notice if the emotional weight has shifted. The facts haven't changed, but your relationship to them might have more space. More air. The obstacle hasn't moved, but you have gained a higher path from which to see it. The Stoics have this phrase, the reserve clause. It's a simple idea. You add, fate permitting, to any plan you make. Or if nothing prevents, it's not about doubting yourself, it's about respecting reality. You build resilience by making the obstacle part of the plan itself. Not an exception to it. You set your intention, you decide to do something, but you hold it loosely. You add the clause, I'll finish this project by Friday, fate permitting. I'll drive to see my family this weekend if nothing prevents. What that does is prepare you for interruptions before they happen. So when something comes up, a sudden illness, a cancelled flight, it isn't a shocking break from your perfect plan. It's just one of the variables you had already accounted for. It was always a possibility. Seneca wrote about this. He used the analogy of sailing. A skilled sailor sets out for the harbor with clear intention. But he knows the sea. He says, I intend to reach the port if nothing hinders me, if I am not prevented by a storm. The sailor's plan isn't just the destination. His plan includes the wisdom of the sea. The potential for a storm is woven right into his intention. So when the winds rise, he isn't angry at the universe. He adjusts the sails. The obstacle was part of the journey's equation from the start. Think of a modern example, planning an outdoor birthday party. The common approach is to plan for sun. You send invitations, order food, visualize a perfect day. When the forecast turns to rain, it feels like a personal attack, an obstacle that ruins everything. Now apply the reserve clause. From the start, your plan is different. You intend to host the party in the garden, weather permitting. You have a backup location in mind from day one. The rain isn't an obstacle to your plan. It's a considered branch of your plan's execution. When the clouds gather, you aren't frustrated. You just activate the other path you had already mapped. The event isn't ruined. It's just happening in a different, prepared-for way. Your peace of mind stays intact because the obstacle was never outside the plan. This shifts your relationship with control. You stop trying to command the world to follow your script. You write your script with the world's unpredictable nature as a co-author. Your intention stays strong, your action stays focused, but your attachment to a single, rigid outcome softens, and in that softness is a real strength. So a small practice for today. Think of one specific plan you have for tomorrow. Could be as simple as taking a walk at lunch, or as significant as having an important conversation. Now silently add the reserve clause to it. I will take that walk at noon if nothing prevents. I will have that talk, fate permitting. That mental note does two things. First, it acknowledges the truth that life is fluid. Second, it builds a buffer of calm inside you. When a small interruption does arise, you'll meet it not as an enemy that shattered your perfect day, but as a familiar traveler on a path you had already foreseen. The obstacle becomes part of the terrain you knew you might have to cross, and that makes all the difference. Some of the greatest art, the greatest innovation, comes out of severe limitation. A poet works inside the rigid structure of a sonnet. A composer writes for just a few instruments. A city has to rebuild itself under immense scarcity. And these constraints, they don't crush creativity, they channel it. They force a focus, that unlimited freedom, it just dilutes that focus. This is what Stoicism sees in an obstacle. A limitation, a barrier, it's a form of constraint, and a constraint by its nature, it removes the clutter of endless possibility. It asks one question. Given this reality, what can you do? It defines the playing field, and in doing that, it clarifies the game. Stoicism has always valued resourcefulness over resources. It's about making the absolute best use of what you have, right here, right now. Epictetus, who started with so little, he taught this. He said, "Don't hope for events to happen as you wish. Wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." And in another lesson, he said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." The obstacle, the constraint, it shows you what's in your power. It strips away the illusion that you need more to begin. You have this situation, these tools. This moment, now what will you build? Think of a writer with a tight deadline. With unlimited time, they might circle a project for months, tweaking sentences, doubting ideas, trapped by perfectionism. The deadline removes that luxury. It forces decisive action. It prioritizes completion over perfection. The writer has to focus on the core message, the essential story. That constraint of time becomes the engine that drives the work to completion. It clears away the mental fog of too many choices or a small startup. They have a tiny budget next to their giant competitors. That constraint looks like a massive obstacle, but it fosters ingenious solutions. It forces lean operations, creative marketing, a deep connection with their early customers. They can't buy attention, so they have to earn it. They can't throw money at problems, so they have to think their way through. That budget constraint becomes their competitive advantage. It defines a clearer, more focused path. So look at one constraint in your own life. Maybe it's a tight budget, a lack of formal training, limited time each day, or a physical space that feels too small. Our instinct is to see it as a wall, but the Stoic asks, what door does this wall force me to find? What does this limitation clarify? Take a moment, identify one specific constraint, then list one potential benefit it forces. If your constraint is a small living space, the benefit might be that it forces you to be intentional about what you own. Less clutter, more peace. If your constraint is a demanding job with little free time, the opportunity might be that it forces you to use those spare minutes with extreme purpose. For a single, focused hobby, a learning project, the constraint isn't the enemy of your path. It's the sculptor that gives the path its shape. By accepting the limitation and working within it, you stop fighting the terrain. You start learning its contours. You begin to walk the path that was there all along, hidden in plain sight, defined by the very walls you thought were holding you back. We measure progress in straight lines: more money, a better job, more followers. We draw those lines and call that success, but the Stoics measured something else. Something internal. Progress wasn't about moving smoothly across some map. It was about the quality of your character, right where you stood. And that kind of growth, the deep kind, it almost never happens on a smooth road. It happens in the friction, when you stumble, when you're forced to stand still and reckon with something, an obstacle that tests your patience or your courage or your integrity. From a Stoic view, that represents more genuine progress than an easy, untested win. The easy win might move you forward on a chart, but it leaves your inner world unchanged. The difficult challenge, the one that forces you to dig deeper, that's the real path. The path is the test itself. Every time you meet frustration with calm, or unfairness with fairness, or fear with a small act of courage, you have progressed. Regardless of whether the external situation improved, Seneca wrote about this. He said a calm sea does not make a skilled sailor, and a tranquil life does not make a wise person. The skill of the sailor is forged in the storm. The wisdom of the person is forged in life's inevitable troubles. If your life has been perfectly easy, you have no evidence of your own strength. No proof of your resilience. The obstacles, the periods of feeling stuck or pushed back, they are the training grounds where wisdom is earned, where progress is actually made. Think about recovering from a significant mistake. The conventional view says you should never make the error, that a clean record is the goal, but life doesn't work that way. The real progress, the Stoic progress, isn't in the flawless performance. It's in what happens after the stumble. It's in the humility you gain when you admit you were wrong. The self-knowledge that comes from understanding why you made that choice. The repair work, the difficult conversations, the commitment to do better next time. That messy, uncomfortable process builds more wisdom and virtue than 100 easy, perfect successes ever could. The mistake becomes the path to a deeper understanding of yourself and your values. So consider one key area of your life, your work, a relationship, a personal goal. How have you been defining progress? Is it only about forward motion, accolades, visible wins? Or does your definition include the quieter, harder victories, the growth in resilience after a setback, the patience learned from a delay, the clarity gained from a failure? What if you measured your progress not by how far you've traveled on an easy road, but by how much stronger you've become for having traveled a difficult one? The Stoics talked about building something inside you, an inner citadel. It's a kind of stronghold, a space you create through practice. The point isn't to control the world. It's to make sure the world can't control your peace. When that space is strong, outside events, the obstacles, the criticism, they're like weather against a well-built house. You hear the wind, you see the rain, but inside you're safe, you're calm. The storm isn't your experience. Your life becomes about the ground you stand on inside, not just what happens to you. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this. In the middle of politics, of war, he'd remind himself to retreat into that self. He wrote that people look for retreats in the country, by the sea. But that's missing the point, he said. When you can retreat into yourself anytime, nowhere is more peaceful than your own mind. That retreat was his citadel. It's where he found clarity, no matter the chaos around the throne. The obstacle, the conflict, it lost its power the moment he stepped inside, so the obstacle gets reframed. It stops being a block in your path. It becomes just a phenomenon on the path. It exists, you observe it, you might respond, but you don't let it in to ransack your peace. Think about online criticism. The event is neutral words on a screen. Usually, we let those words breach the walls. They become internal. They trigger anger or self-doubt. The comment becomes an obstacle to your worth, and you fight a battle inside your own mind. But with a strong inner citadel, it's different. You see the comment. You acknowledge it. You might even look for useful feedback, but you don't grant it entry to your core sense of worth. You see it as external noise, one opinion among billions. The obstacle only becomes a path if you choose to use it, as practice in resilience maybe, or a reminder to hold your own values above public perception. Your path stays internal, focused on your integrity, your calm. The external noise is just scenery you're walking past. Building this is daily work. It's the sum of all the principles. It's the discipline of perception, choosing your judgments. It's Amor Fati, loving your fate. It's focusing on what you can control, your actions, your reactions. Every time you meet frustration with patience, you add a stone to the wall. Every time you accept a setback without letting it define you, you reinforce the gate. So visualize your own inner citadel. What is it? A quiet room, a garden, a watchtower overlooking your life. Then ask, what's one small thing you could do today to strengthen it? Maybe 5 minutes of silence before you check your phone, or taking 3 breaths when irritation comes, or writing down one value you're protecting inside. That single act is you walking the path, not around the obstacle but through its territory, fortified from within. The Stoics didn't wait for trouble to find them. They'd go looking for it in small doses. It sounds counterintuitive, like self-inflicted hardship, but it's a practice, voluntary discomfort. It's a form of training. Like a vaccine for the soul, you expose yourself to a tiny, controlled amount of a difficulty to build immunity against the larger, unexpected versions. The goal isn't punishment. It's to prove to your own mind that you can handle far more than you think, that most of what we call suffering is just a strong preference for ease being challenged. Seneca did this deliberately. He was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, and yet periodically he would set aside his riches, live as if he were poor for a few days. Wear simple clothes, eat the plainest food, sleep on a hard bed. He wrote that he did this so he would never fear what he already knew he could endure. He was reminding his nervous system that comfort is a bonus, not a requirement for a good life. The philosopher Musonius Rufus taught the same thing. He said we should practice hardship by choice, so that if we are ever forced into it, it won't feel foreign or catastrophic. We will have already walked that ground. This practice trains a crucial distinction, the difference between discomfort and true harm. Your mind learns that being cold or hungry or a little tired is not an emergency. It's just a sensation, it's temporary. So when a real, involuntary obstacle hits a financial pinch, a stressful situation, a physical challenge, your baseline of fear is lower. You've already faced similar sensations in your training. The new obstacle feels less like a terrifying unknown, more like a variation of a condition you've already mastered. Modern applications are simple. It could be taking a cold shower for the last 30 seconds of your morning routine, not to torture yourself, but to practice welcoming a shock to your system with calm breath. It could be skipping a meal occasionally, not for dieting, but to remember that hunger pangs pass and your mind remains clear. It could be taking a walk in brisk weather without bundling up. To feel the chill on your skin and realize it's just information, not a threat. Each of these small acts is a rehearsal. You are rehearsing your response to difficulty. When the big, unscripted challenges of life arrive, you're not performing for the first time. You've already been on that stage in a controlled setting. Your confidence is built on experience, not just hope. So here's a challenge for this week. Choose one small, voluntary discomfort to engage in. It must be safe, and it must be a conscious choice. Maybe it's leaving your phone in another room for an evening, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or having a conversation without complaining about anything. Just one, and as you do it, observe your reaction. Notice the initial resistance, the little voice that says this is unnecessary or silly. Then notice the quiet strength that emerges on the other side of that resistance. You are not just enduring a minor annoyance. You are fortifying your inner citadel, one chosen stone at a time. you are making the path of life, with all its inevitable rocks and rough patches, feel more like your own familiar trail. To a Stoic, nothing is isolated. Every event is part of a web. A single pull sends ripples everywhere, seen and unseen. That idea is sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things. It's a view of the universe as a coherent whole, not a series of accidents. Through that lens, the obstacle in front of you changes. It stops looking like a random attack or just bad luck. It starts to look like a knot, a point where threads come together. Marcus Aurelius thought about this. He wrote that all things are interwoven, a sacred bond. That everything harmonizes with you, which brought it into being. He saw his own challenges, the betrayals, the hardships of ruling, as strands in a larger design. His duty wasn't to curse the thread, but to understand its place, to see how his response would become part of the weaving. That perspective raises a question. If everything is connected, what if the obstacle you're facing is linked to the very good you're seeking? What if removing it would unravel necessary lessons or prevent other goods from ever forming? Then the obstacle isn't a detour, it's part of the path's fabric. The rock in the stream isn't an error. It's what gives the water its song, shapes the banks, creates pools where life gathers. Think of a historical moment. A young scientist misses a train. Frustrated, delayed, he talks to another traveler in the station. That conversation sparks a collaboration, leads to a discovery. The missed train, the obstacle, wasn't a blockage. It was the condition that made the meeting possible. The two events were woven together, or a modern story. An entrepreneur's first venture fails. They lose time, money, confidence. That failure forces a re-evaluation. In the ashes, they see a different problem, one they can solve. They build a second company on new principles. The success of the second is built on the lessons of the first. The failure wasn't the end. It was the fork that redirected them. The two journeys are inseparable, so here's an exercise. Look back at one significant obstacle, a rejection, a loss, a difficult period. Instead of seeing it as an isolated bad event, trace the threads. Can you find one positive development now that might not have happened without that challenge? Maybe a relationship formed because you were vulnerable. A skill learned out of necessity, a depth of character or empathy forged only by that hardship. You're not justifying the pain, you're observing the connection. Seeing how that knot in the tapestry led the thread to a place you now value. When you can do that, even tentatively, the path feels less like random cracks. More like a single, continuous journey. What if your first thought was how interesting instead of this is terrible? That small change in framing, it's a doorway. It moves you from complaint into curiosity, and curiosity is the engine of Stoic wisdom. Complaint is a surrender, it's a passive reaction. It says this shouldn't be happening to me, and I refuse to engage. It keeps you stuck in the feeling of being wronged. Curiosity is an active use of reason. It says this is happening, let me understand it, let me see what it's made of. That shift doesn't deny the difficulty, it changes your relationship to it. The obstacle stops being a wall you're shouting at. It becomes a door you're trying to unlock. And the key is asking questions. Epictetus taught that difficulties reveal our ignorance. They show where our understanding is incomplete or where our expectations are out of line with reality. He saw every trouble as a teacher, a chance to learn about the nature of things or about our own nature. When you meet an obstacle with curiosity, you accept that invitation to learn. You treat the problem as material for your own education. Think of a technical problem at work. Software keeps crashing, or a process is suddenly inefficient. The complaint response is to vent, to blame the tool or the person who set it up, to see it as an annoying interruption. The curious response is different. You lean in, you say, how interesting, why is it failing now? What sequence triggers the crash? What does this reveal about the limits of the system, or about how we've been using it? Your investigation turns the obstacle into a detective story. You're not just fixing a bug, you're learning about the underlying architecture. That knowledge makes you more capable for this problem and the next one. Or a misunderstanding in a relationship, someone's words hurt you. The complaint loop is to dwell on the injury, to rehearse your grievance. The curious approach asks different questions. I wonder what they meant by that. What might they be seeing that I'm missing? What in my own communication could have been unclear? This isn't about assigning blame. It's about seeking understanding. You're exploring the puzzle of another person's perspective. That exploration, driven by curiosity, is the path through the conflict. It builds empathy and clarity where complaint would only build walls. So a simple practice, catch yourself in the act of complaining. It might be out loud or just in your internal monologue. The moment you notice it, pause, then immediately ask one curious question about the situation. Not a leading question that assumes you're right, but a genuine, open-ended inquiry. Why does this process work this way? What is this person's priority right now? What part of this is actually within my control to change? That single question is the pivot. It turns your energy from outward frustration to inward investigation. You stop being a victim of the obstacle and start being a student of it. And on that path of learning, you find the wisdom that smooth sailing could never have taught you. The Stoics would keep a skull on their desk, a reminder of mortality. They called it Memento Mori. Remember, you must pass. It wasn't about fear, it was about focus. The ultimate obstacle, the fact that our time is limited, that was the engine for them. That's what gave the path its urgency, its meaning. Without that limit, there's no need for courage today. No call for patience right now. No reason to choose virtue over comfort in this moment. The finiteness of life clarifies everything. It strips away the trivial, forces the essential to the surface. Seneca wrote about this in his letters on the shortness of life. He said it's not that we have a short time to live. It's that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough if you know how to use it, but we act like we'll live forever. We postpone what matters, and then we complain that time is too short. That obstacle, the closing window, is what makes the view through it precious. Remembering your time is limited, it doesn't shrink your life, it deepens it. It asks you to stop seeing time as an enemy you're running out of, and to start seeing it as the path itself. Every moment becomes part of the meaningful walk. Not just a step toward some distant finish line. You see a mirror of this with deadlines. A project with no deadline often drifts, loses energy, gets cluttered with things that don't matter. But impose a firm, reasonable deadline and focus sharpens. Priorities become clear, action becomes decisive. That deadline is a form of artificial mortality. A healthy constraint, it forces the work to become the path. The pressure isn't an obstacle to doing good work. It's the condition that makes the good work happen. It tells you what matters right now. So if you truly accepted your time was limited, what one thing would you stop seeing as an obstacle and start engaging with today? Would it be that difficult conversation you've been avoiding because the obstacle of conflict feels too large? Would it be that creative project you've called a pipe dream because the obstacle of not being good enough seems insurmountable? Or would it be the choice to be fully present with someone you care about, instead of seeing the obligation of time as a block in your schedule? The skull on the desk was a tool for perspective. It asked the Stoic to live with death over their left shoulder, not as a specter of doom, but as a friend who whispers, "This moment is your point of power." This challenge before you is not a delay on your path. It is the very ground of your path, and you get to walk it now. The Stoics had a drill for this. A mental exercise. They called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds dark, but the purpose is practical. It's not pessimism, it's inoculation. You imagine a future trouble vividly, and by imagining it, you take away its power to shock you. the obstacle becomes familiar, and a familiar thought is easier to face than a surprise. Seneca did this. He would set aside time to rehearse things: poverty, exile, loss. He wasn't doing it to dwell in fear. He had two aims: first, to feel a deeper gratitude for what he had, knowing it could change. And second, to rehearse his response. He would ask, if this happened, what would I do? How would I keep my character? By walking through it in his mind, he was building pathways. So if it ever did happen, he wouldn't start from panic. He'd be stepping onto a path he'd already mapped. That's the shift. The imagined obstacle becomes a rehearsed part of the journey. It's not an ambush anymore. It's a checkpoint you've already seen. You've already decided quietly how you'll meet it. This preparation doesn't attract difficulty. It just means that if difficulty comes, it finds you ready. Take something that makes you nervous, a big presentation. The common approach is to hope for the best. To picture everything going perfectly, but that leaves you fragile. The moment something goes off script, a tech glitch, a tough question, you're thrown. Your anxiety spikes because you have no plan for the deviation. Now try the premeditation. Before the presentation, sit quietly. Imagine what could go wrong. The projector fails, your notes are out of order, someone challenges your data. Don't just skim these thoughts, sit with each one, then, crucially, imagine your response. If the projector's down, you calmly switch to speaking from memory using the whiteboard. For the challenging question, you pause, thank them, offer to discuss it later. You're not practicing failure, you're practicing composure in the face of variables. You're making the obstacle part of your preparation. Then you walk into the real room with a quiet confidence. Not that nothing will go wrong, but that you've already faced the possibilities. You know how you'll walk forward. So here's a small practice. In the next few minutes, pick one potential challenge for the coming week. A difficult conversation, a logistical hurdle, a task you're dreading. Close your eyes, premeditate it, picture it unfolding in detail. See the stumbling block clearly. Then shift your focus. Don't dwell on the problem. Draft your response. How would your calmest, most capable self handle it? What would that person do first? What principle would guide them? This mental rehearsal isn't worry, it's strategic preparation. It's drawing a map for a path you hope not to take, but you'll be ready to walk if you have to. Sometimes the biggest thing in your way is another person, someone at work who makes things harder, a relative who's always finding fault, even a stranger who does something careless and it throws off your whole day. These feel like the real obstacles because they have their own will. They can choose to be difficult, and so your instinct is to push back, to argue, to hold a grudge, to try and make them act differently. The Stoics thought this was missing the point. The obstacle isn't really their behavior. It's your expectation that they should act some other way, and your reaction to them, that part you control. Marcus Aurelius dealt with this all the time. Senators plotting against him, generals being impossible. In his private notes, he kept coming back to it. He wrote that people exist for each other, and yet, he said, they often act against each other. So what do you do? His answer was to train himself, to remember that when someone does something wrong, it's out of ignorance. In their own mind, what they're doing is right or necessary. Nobody chooses what they see as evil. That doesn't make the behavior okay, but it explains it. It means the other person isn't a villain, they're just mistaken, acting from a wrong idea about what's good, so your path isn't through changing them. It's around that understanding, it's keeping your own character intact, even though they're wrong. He wrote that you can also commit injustice by doing nothing. That's a strong idea. It means our failing can be an omission. By reacting with rage or sinking into bitterness or paying back harm with harm, we do an injustice to our own nature. We leave our post, then the real obstacle is our own lost integrity. The difficult person can't actually touch your character unless you hand it over through your reaction. In practice, what does that mean? Take a common problem at work, a teammate who misses deadlines so you're always scrambling. the usual view says that person is the block. The path is to get them to change, confront them, complain, maybe act out. That often just creates more friction. The Stoic approach moves the action back to you. The path isn't in changing them, which you can't control. The path is in how you handle the reality of their behavior, which you can control. That means forbearance, patience when you're provoked. It means communicating clearly and calmly about the impact of the delays. Not to blame, but to state facts and look for solutions. It might mean building buffers into your own workflow. The goal isn't to win against the person. It's to keep your own professionalism, your own peace, and to get the shared work done as well as possible under the circumstances. Doing that, you walk a path of resilience, you build skill. That difficult colleague, ironically, becomes the condition that trains those virtues in you. They're the rough ground that makes your footing stronger. Think of one person you find obstructive, anyone. Now, instead of focusing on what you wish they'd stop doing, consider this. Next time you interact with them, what's one virtue you could practice? It might be patience, listening all the way through before you answer. It might be understanding, asking one question about their perspective. Or it might just be the courage to not get pulled into the old, reactive pattern. Write that one intention down. A single, small commitment to walk your own path with integrity, no matter what terrain the other person provides. That's how you turn the obstacle of another person into the substance of your own growth. Most suffering comes from trying to control what you can't. It's that simple. And it's that difficult. We put so much energy into trying to command outcomes, people's opinions, events that are just outside our jurisdiction, and then we call the frustration that follows an obstacle. But the obstacle isn't the event, it's the tension between our demand for a specific outcome and the indifferent flow of reality. Letting go of that demand isn't giving up. It's aligning with the flow. Then what happens is just the terrain you have to cross. Epictetus starts his handbook with this. Some things are up to us, he says, and some things are not. Our opinions, our impulses, what we desire, what we avoid, these are up to us. Our body, our property, our reputation, any public office, these are not. Suffering starts the moment we confuse the two. When we invest our peace of mind in that second column, in the things not up to us, we build our house on sand. Every shift in the wind feels like a personal attack. Every change in the weather feels like an obstacle in our path. Think about planning something outdoors. A wedding, a community picnic. You can control the invitations, the food, the schedule, but you cannot control the weather. The common approach is to cling to control over the one thing you can't command. You check the forecast constantly, you worry, you feel that knot in your stomach as clouds gather. The potential for rain becomes this massive obstacle to your happiness. It feels like the universe is personally sabotaging your day. Now apply the Stoic release. You acknowledge the truth. The weather is not up to you, it never was. By releasing your demand for a sunny day, you don't become passive, you become strategic. Your energy shifts from futile worry to adaptable planning. You secure a tent as a backup. You prepare a gracious announcement about moving indoors. Your focus turns to what is up to you, creating a warm atmosphere regardless of the conditions outside. The rain, if it comes, is no longer an obstacle. It's just a feature of the day's terrain. Your path is no longer about fighting the sky, but about walking on whatever ground the sky provides. This illusion of control is behind so much anxiety. We try to control how others see us, so a critical comment shatters our peace. We try to control a project's success, so every setback feels like a personal failure. We try to control the pace of our lives, so a traffic jam or a delayed flight feels like an injustice. In each case, the obstacle is manufactured by our own misplaced expectation of command. So here's a small exercise. Take a moment. Write down 3 things you're currently trying to control that are ultimately not up to you. A loved one's health decisions. The outcome of a job application, a colleague's behavior, or even the past trying to control a mistake that's already been made. See them on the page. Acknowledge their true nature. They belong to the realm of externals. Now choose one, just one, and for today, consciously release your grip on it. You don't have to stop caring. You simply stop demanding that it conform to your will. When your mind drifts back to trying to control it, gently remind yourself, this is not my department. My department is my response, my attitude, my next right action. Feel the space that opens up when that burden is set down. That space isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's where you find the real path, the one built from your own choices, not from your illusions of command. Equanimity isn't about calm water. It's about a stable ship in rough water. You can't have a life without waves. That's impossible. The goal is to build something inside you that can ride them. A steadiness that doesn't come from no turmoil. It comes from how you respond to it. That's the Stoic aim, and you can only build it in the conditions that seem to threaten it. The storm isn't in the way of your peace. It's the only place you can build that kind of peace. Seneca talked about the wise person being undisturbed. Not because their life is perfect, because they've found a balance. He said they're like the deep ocean. On the surface, there are waves, events, emotions, challenges. But down in the depths, there's a stillness. That stillness isn't passive. It's an active composure. You maintain it through choice. You don't get to the deep calm by waiting for the surface to be smooth. You learn to go to the depths while the storm is right there. Think of a high-pressure family situation, a health scare, a sudden conflict. Usually, people get swept into the chaos. They match the anxiety in the room. They rush for fixes. They feel responsible for solving everything right away, and that often makes the turmoil worse. Equanimity is different. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't act. It means your first action is to anchor yourself. You take a breath before you speak. You listen without immediately reacting. You ask questions instead of giving commands. Your calm becomes a point of stability for others. You can't control the medical outcome. You can't control another person's feelings, but you can control your own presence. By keeping that steadiness, you don't add more panic. You become a source of clarity. The crisis, the intense stress, becomes the ground where you practice equanimity. Your path through it is defined by your inner weather, no matter what's happening outside. So here's a small prompt. On a scale from 1 to 10, rate your inner steadiness during a recent stressful moment. Be honest, was it a 2 where you felt completely tossed? Or a 7 where you felt shaky but found a few breaths of calm? Now pick one Stoic thought that could nudge that number 1 point higher next time. It might be the dichotomy of control. This part is mine, that part is not. It might be a reserve clause. I'll handle this as well as I can, fate permitting. It might just be remembering that difficult moments are part of the journey. Your job isn't to avoid them. It's to meet them with your character intact. That single thought is ballast. It helps keep your ship upright. It makes the rough see the path to becoming an unshakable captain. Stoicism doesn't really have a concept of pure failure. It's more like feedback. Any outcome, whether it's what you wanted or not, is just information. The Stoics called these things indifferent. They don't make you better or worse on their own. Your character comes from how you respond to them, so a failure isn't a judgment of your worth. It's a report from reality. It shows you what didn't work, where your assumptions were wrong, how the landscape actually is. That information is crucial. It's the material for your next try. Without it, you're just moving in the dark. Seneca wrote about this in his letters. He saw that losses and setbacks test us more than easy wins. A victory might feel good, but it doesn't teach much about your limits or about how complicated things are. A setback forces a different kind of look. It asks harder questions. It removes illusions. It requires humility. And that humility isn't weakness. It's the basis for real strength. It's the clarity to see what's actually there, not what you hope is there. Take a practical case. You work for weeks on a proposal, a grant application, a client pitch. You put your best work forward and you get a rejection. The usual story says you failed. The path is closed. That story leads to discouragement, maybe giving up. The Stoic story is different. The rejection isn't a stop sign, it's a guidepost. It gives you specific clues. Was the timing off? Was the alignment not right? Did you miss a key concern? Each clue is a piece of data. That feedback lets you adjust your approach. Redirect your energy. The rejection didn't end the journey. It pointed to a different turn in the road. Thomas Edison talked about the light bulb this way. He didn't call 10,000 attempts failures. He said he found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Each dead end was a necessary step. It narrowed the path to the answer. The obstacle of not working yet was the path to finding it. So here's something to consider. Think of something recent you called a failure, a project that stalled, a goal you missed, a personal mistake. Put the emotion aside for a minute. Look at it like a scientist would, like an experiment. What 3 specific lessons did it give you? Maybe it showed a skill gap you can now work on. Maybe it showed your effort was in the wrong place, pointing you somewhere more fitting, or it taught you about patience, or about getting feedback sooner. Write those 3 lessons down. When you do that, you perform the change. You turn the weight of failure into guidance. You stop seeing a boulder in your path, and you start reading the map it was trying to give you. Your biggest obstacle might be your comfort zone, not the hardship you face, but the ease you build for yourself. The Stoics saw this. They warned that a life of constant comfort is a trap. It doesn't lead to happiness. It leads to a kind of sleep, a dulling. The obstacle isn't the rock in the road. It's the temptation to stay in the soft chair. Musonius Rufus taught this. He said luxury ruins the body and the mind. It makes a person weak in thought and in action. He argued that difficulty is necessary. A plant needs wind to grow strong roots. A person needs challenge to develop strength. Seneca said the same. He saw that constant comfort makes the mind flabby. It loses its edge. Its capacity for endurance shrinks. He wrote that fortune does us a wrong when she spares us all misfortune, because then we never get tested. We never find out what we're made of. Today, this obstacle is everywhere. It's not about having a nice home. It's the systemic avoidance of friction. Endless entertainment, so we never sit with our own thoughts. Apps that eliminate every minor effort, so we lose the small satisfactions of doing things ourselves. Algorithms that show us only what we like, so our views are never challenged. This cushioning doesn't make life better. It makes us fragile. The moment something requires effort, we see it as a system error. An interruption, not the substance of a meaningful life, so the path forward is counterintuitive. You have to sometimes choose the less comfortable option. Not to punish yourself, but to stay awake, to keep your resilience from atrophying. It could be taking the stairs, not for fitness, but for the reminder your body can do hard things. It could be reading a book that challenges your beliefs. It could be having a difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. The goal is to reintroduce small, voluntary doses of healthy friction. To remember that growth happens at the edge of your comfort, not in the center. So here's a question. Look at your routines, your habits. Where has comfort become so seamless it might be holding you back? Is it in consuming easy, endless content, which steals time from deep learning? Is it in always taking the path of least resistance in relationships, avoiding conflict but also avoiding deeper intimacy? Or is it in your work, sticking to tasks you've mastered, avoiding the awkwardness of learning something new? Identify one area and consider one small, intentional step to introduce a little productive discomfort there. That step isn't a departure from your path. It's you reclaiming the path from the silent obstacle of too much ease. Stoics talk about this gap, a pause. Between something happening and how you react, that's where your freedom actually is. It's the difference between being pulled by every event and being the one who decides what happens next. In that pause, you're not just facing an obstacle, you're building the path forward. You take what just happened and you decide with reason what it becomes. That's the core of Stoic action. Epictetus put it well. He said, when an impression hits you, don't let it knock you over. Tell it to wait, say, hold on. Let me see what you are, let me test you. That moment of holding on, that's the Stoic pause. It's choosing not to be swept away by the first, loudest feeling. It's where you look at the impression, you question its story, and you choose your judgment. That choice changes everything. It turns an outside event from a command into just a suggestion. From something that pushes you into a path you can walk with intention. Think about an angry email. The event itself is neutral, just words on a screen. The immediate impression is one of attack, disrespect, a threat without a pause. That impression pulls you into reaction. Your heart races, your fingers move to type a defensive reply. In that unpaused reaction, the email becomes a real obstacle. It takes your peace, it hijacks your time, it can escalate everything. Now put in the Stoic pause. You read the email, you feel the heat, and instead of moving, you stop. You lean back from the screen. You take one deep breath. In that pause, you take back your sovereignty. You ask those questions. What does this impression actually represent? Is this a real attack, or is this person just under stress? Is there any useful feedback here, even with the poor delivery? What's my goal? To win an argument or to resolve this and protect my own character? From that quiet space, your response will be different. It might be asking to schedule a call. It might be a brief, factual reply. It might even be no reply at all. The email didn't change, but your path through it did. You walk the path of chosen response, not the ditch of reaction. The pause is where you use all the other principles. You remember the dichotomy of control. Their tone isn't up to you, but my calm reply is. You practice Amor, Fati. This difficult message is part of my work today, and I will use it. The obstacle of the email becomes the ground for practicing virtue. So here's a simple practice. Just once today, practice that pause. Pick a minor irritation. A slow line, an interruption, a spilled drink. The moment you feel that flicker of annoyance, don't act. Count slowly to 3 in your mind. 1, 2, 3. In that brief gap, just watch the feeling. Don't feed it. Then and only then proceed. You don't need to solve anything grand. You're just training the muscle of that gap. You're proving to yourself that between the world's push and your action, there is a space. And in that space, you hold the power to turn any apparent block into a step you consciously choose to take. The Stoics had this idea of the sage. It was their North Star, this ideal of perfect wisdom and virtue. But it was a thought experiment. No one actually claimed to be the sage, not even the teachers. It was a distant horizon, but that horizon gave them direction. In moments of confusion, they'd ask a simple question. What would the sage do here? And that question turns any obstacle into a training ground. It reframes the problem. It's not a personal attack anymore. It's an invitation to practice wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. In his private journal, he'd remind himself to live as a Roman and a man. To fulfill his duties with dignity and courage, he was comparing his actions to an ideal standard. Epictetus taught his students to think of Socrates or other wise figures, to ask how they would bear sickness or exile or slander. The point wasn't to imitate them perfectly, it was to use their imagined composure as a mirror. A mirror for your own reactions. When you picture a perfectly wise person facing your exact situation, the path forward often clarifies, the emotional noise fades, and the principled response comes into view. Take a personal insult. Someone says something cutting about your work or your character. The immediate, untrained reaction is to feel wounded. Then defensive, then maybe retaliatory. You see the insult as an obstacle to your peace, to your reputation. Now, ask the sage question: how would a person of perfect wisdom view this? The sage would understand that an insult reveals the state of mind of the person giving it, not the worth of the person receiving it. The sage would see those words as a reflection of the other person's confusion, their own pain, their own mistaken judgments about what is good. So the sage would feel no personal injury. The obstacle of the insult just vanishes as a threat. And the path that remains is how to respond with justice, and maybe with kindness, perhaps with silence, perhaps with a question that diffuses the anger. But never with a matching spite. This mental model is a tool for elevation. It lifts you out of the narrow perspective of your own wounded ego. It lets you see the situation from a higher vantage point. The obstacle is no longer about you. It's about the conditions of human ignorance and your opportunity to navigate them with grace. So here's a small practice. Think of one current difficulty, a friction point in your day or your life. Now, take a few moments to journal from the sage's perspective. Write down in a sentence or two how a perfectly wise, calm version of you would interpret this event. Not as a disaster, but as what? Then write down one action that idealized self would take, not a grand gesture, the first small, principled step. You don't have to be that perfect self today. But by clearly seeing the path they would walk, you make it easier to take your own next step along it. The universe, to a Stoic, isn't random, it's rational order. That's the logos. It's this intelligent principle, a kind of divine reason that structures everything, a web of cause and effect, coherent, purposeful, even when we can't see the purpose. So nothing is really an accident. Every event, the growth of a tree, the rise and fall of an empire, it's all a thread in a vast, intelligible tapestry. An obstacle, then, isn't a chaotic interruption. It's a necessary component of this rational structure, a knot in the weave, a turn in the pattern, part of the whole design. Your role isn't to curse the thread, it's to understand your place within the weaving, to accept the material you've been given, the circumstances, the challenges as your assigned part in the universal order. Marcus Aurelius returned to this. He wrote, "Accept everything which happens, even if it seems disagreeable, because it leads to the health of the universe." He saw his own life, all its burdens of leadership and personal loss, as a small but essential part of this cosmic health. To fight your assigned role, to rage against the material of your life, is to be at war with reason itself. It's to declare that you, a single fragment, know better than the intelligence of the whole. The Stoic alternative is humble alignment, to look at the obstacle and say, this too belongs. This is part of the terrain I am meant to cross, not because it feels good, but because it is real and it is here, woven into the fabric of what is. Consider a forest fire. From a human, immediate view, it's a catastrophe, a senseless destruction, but from the perspective of the logos, from the system of nature, it's a necessary reset. It clears old growth, it returns nutrients to the soil, it allows for new life that couldn't otherwise emerge. The fire is part of the forest's long-term health. It's rational within the system, even as it's devastating within a single moment. Our job isn't to call the universe cruel for allowing fire. Our job is to respond with the reason available to us, to protect life where we can, to rebuild with wisdom, to learn how to live in harmony with these forces. Or a sudden market crash, it feels like chaos, a rupture, yet within the vast, complex system of global economics, it's an emergent phenomenon, a correction born from 1,000 interconnected decisions, fears, and realities. It is, in a coldly rational sense, the system working itself out. The Stoic response isn't to find it meaningless, but to find the meaning in your own actions within it. The crash becomes the new terrain. The rational, virtuous path is to assess what is truly yours, your skills, your adaptability, your courage, and to begin building again on this new, harder ground. The obstacle reveals the structure of reality more clearly than steady growth ever could. So if the universe is fundamentally rational, not chaotic, what might be the potential hidden order in your current biggest challenge? You don't have to believe in a personal destiny. Just consider the possibility that this difficulty isn't a random error, but a feature of a larger, coherent process. How might this challenge be forcing a necessary change in direction, burning away what is no longer sustainable, teaching a lesson that prosperity could not? Asking this doesn't dissolve the pain. It changes your relationship to it. It turns the obstacle from a meaningless block into a question posed by the universe itself. And your thoughtful, virtuous response becomes your part in the ongoing, rational story of the whole. The past is fixed. The present is where your power is. Everything behind you is a closed book. You can read it, you can learn from it, but you can't change a single word. The ink is dry. To spend your energy wishing it were different, to let regret become an anchor, is a battle you've already lost. And that fight itself becomes the obstacle. It blocks the only path that's open, the one right under your feet. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said, "Don't disturb yourself by picturing your whole life. Don't think of all the troubles that may never happen. Keep within the present moment." He saw the mind's habit of wandering into the past, replaying mistakes as a theft of the only time you can ever truly possess. The past is just a fact. It's not good or bad. It just is. Our judgment of it, our attachment, that's what creates the suffering. And that suffering is a choice we make now. Seneca put it plainly. He said, "What's the good of dragging up sufferings that are over, of being unhappy now because you were unhappy then?" That's like refusing to walk forward on a clear road because you once tripped on a stone miles behind you. The stone is gone. The road ahead is all that matters. Your attention is your most precious resource. To spend it on what is unchangeable is to waste the very substance of your life. The Stoic practice is to acknowledge the past, learn from it if you can, and then turn your entire being toward the work of the present. That's the only place where virtue can be exercised. Consider someone haunted by a past failure, a business that didn't succeed, a relationship that ended poorly. Every time they face a new opportunity, the ghost of that event whispers to them. It says, "You're not capable, you'll fail again." That ghost becomes a massive obstacle. It saps confidence, creates hesitation. The person isn't fighting the current challenge, they're wrestling with a memory. The Stoic path is to acknowledge the ghost, thank it for the lesson it taught, and then firmly turn away. You look at the current task, the present relationship, and you see it for what it is, a fresh landscape untainted by the past. Your job is not to be perfect or to guarantee an outcome. Your job is to bring your full attention, your courage to this moment, right here. The past failure trained you. It gave you data, resilience. That is its only value. To keep revisiting the pain is to misuse the training. It's like a soldier who spends the entire battle polishing an old scar instead of using the strength it gave him to fight. So here's a prompt. Name one regret you often revisit, one past event your mind wanders back to with a sense of loss or shame. Write it down in a single sentence. Now look at that sentence, acknowledge it as a fact. The ink is dry. Then, on a new line, write down one present action you can take today that is entirely free of that past. An action that exists solely in what you control now. It could be finishing a piece of work with full focus, or reaching out to someone with kindness without any old stories attached. Or simply taking a walk and noticing the world as it is right now. That single action is you walking the path. You're leaving the ghost at the side of the road and moving into the territory you actually inhabit. The past is not in the way, your fixation on it is, and with each step taken in the present, you prove the only real path is the one you're making now. A Stoic invests their attention carefully. It's not an endless resource, it's a kind of currency. Every minute you spend worrying, every hour going over a grievance, that's a withdrawal. You could have spent that on something meaningful. That's the attention economy. And when we call something an obstacle, we usually make a bad investment. The event itself might be small, but we pour a fortune of mental energy into it. We amplify it. We give it a starring role in the story of our day. And it's that investment, not the event, that creates the feeling of a blocked path. The obstacle grows to the size of the attention we pay it. Epictetus understood this. He taught that we aren't disturbed by things, but by the views we take of them. That view, that opinion, is where our attention goes. We aren't bothered by the rain. We're bothered by our opinion that the rain is ruining our plans. We aren't troubled by a critical comment. We're troubled by our opinion that the comment diminishes our worth. The disturbance is a tax. It's a tax we pay on a bad investment of attention. We put our focus on a judgment that causes us pain instead of on the action we can take. Take a noisy environment, construction outside, a loud conversation nearby. The common reaction is to see the noise as the obstacle. Your attention gets captured by it. You listen to every thump. You fume with every raised voice. You invest your focus in the problem, and your path to productive work feels completely blocked. The Stoic redirects that investment. They acknowledge the noise exists, and then they consciously move their attention capital. They invest it not in the external sound, but in the internal task. They focus on the next sentence to write, the next problem to solve. They might even use the irregular noise as a rhythm to work against. The path forward wasn't in silencing the world. They couldn't control that. It was in mastering the allocation of their own attention, which they could. This principle turns every frustration into a question of portfolio management. Is this thought, this worry, yielding a return in clarity or action? Or is it a sunk cost, draining my energy for no gain? Here's a practical audit. For the next hour, observe your own attention like a financial advisor. Keep a loose mental tally. What percentage of your mental capital was spent on labeling and reacting to external events as obstacles? And what percentage was invested thoughtfully in your own judgments, your chosen actions, your constructive responses? The balance you find shows you where your real path is being built and where it's being barricaded by the very resource you control most completely. Stoicism really comes down to one thing. It's your character. That's the only thing that matters. Everything they taught, all the exercises, every line from Marcus or Epictetus, it all points there. They called it virtue, and that's not about being good in a small way. It's about excellence, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. They said that's the only real good. The only thing that's truly yours. Everything else, your health, your money, your reputation, even the people you love, they called those preferred indifference. You can want them, but they aren't good by themselves. Their value only comes from how you use them, how you handle having them or losing them. That changes everything. If virtue is the only good, then nothing outside you can really harm you, unless it makes you a worse person. So an obstacle, by that definition, can't be a true evil. It's just material, raw stuff, and your virtue is the tool that shapes it. Epictetus said it clearly. He asked, what then is to be done? Use what's in your power well, and treat the rest according to its nature. And its nature is however it happens. The only real good is the right use of impressions, the right use of your judgment. Your character in action, that's the thread. It ties everything together. Perception is how you judge the material. Action is how you shape it. The reserve clause is how you hold the plan loosely, keeping your character firm. Amor Fati is how you love the material you've been given. Every obstacle gets redefined, from a stubbed toe to a major loss. It's no longer a threat to your happiness. Because your happiness was never in the external condition. Your good is in one place. It's in the quality of your soul as you meet that condition. Take a serious health challenge. The event itself, the diagnosis, the physical feelings, the uncertain future, that's the material. It's not good or bad. the common way is to see the illness as the ultimate obstacle. A thief of your future, your life becomes a fight against it, and your peace depends on winning, which isn't fully in your control. The Stoic path is different. It asks, where is the good here? The good can't be in just curing the illness. That outcome, while you prefer it, isn't guaranteed. The only guaranteed good is in how you face it. The good is in the courage for each difficult day, the patience in the waiting room, the wisdom to listen to your body, the justice in not taking frustration out on those caring for you. In this view, the illness doesn't block the path of a good life. It becomes the very ground a good life is lived on. It gives you the daily, urgent material for exercising the only thing of real value. Your virtue, the path, isn't about reaching a future where the illness is gone. The path is the quality of your character right here within the illness. That's the ultimate reframe. It turns the whole world into a gym for the soul. Every irritation is a weight to strengthen your patience. Every injustice is a mirror to clarify your fairness. Every loss is a space to practice resilience. Nothing is wasted. Everything is used. So the ultimate question is this. Looking at your life through this lens, what current obstacle is actually offering you the greatest chance to practice virtue today? Is it a person who tries your patience, giving you a daily workout in understanding? Is it a financial pressure providing material for resourcefulness and courage? Is it an inner doubt, an opportunity for self-discipline? Name it. See it not as a block, but as the specific, custom-made equipment for your growth today. The obstacle isn't in the path, it is the path, and the sole purpose of the walk is to forge, step by step, the excellence of your character. The terrain of your life isn't something you travel across. You travel within it. Each challenge, each point of friction, that's not a detour. That's the substance of the path. We started with a simple idea from the Stoics. The obstacle isn't in the way, it is the way, and through this we've seen how that truth reshapes every encounter with difficulty. It starts with perception. The power to choose your judgment of an event. It deepens with Amor Fati, loving your fate, embracing what happens as necessary, as good for you. It becomes practical through action. Using the obstacle as raw material for building virtue, courage, patience, wisdom, and it's anchored in the internal locus of control, investing your energy only in what is truly yours. Your character, your response, your next step. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the quiet of his tent, left a final thought. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength isn't found by clearing the path of rocks. It's found by realizing the rocks are the path. They give you traction. They shape your journey. They forge the resilience you carry forward." So as we close, here's a prompt for your own walk. Look at the week ahead. Identify one specific challenge you know is coming. A meeting you're dreading, a personal goal that feels stalled, a daily friction point. Now, choose just one principle from this journey. Maybe it's to pause and reframe your perception of that event. Or to practice Amor Fati by asking how this difficulty might serve your growth. Or to see it as a training ground for a specific virtue, like patience or courage. Commit to applying that single lens just once with full intention. This is how the philosophy moves from words on a screen to wisdom in your bones. One conscious choice at a time. I'd love to hear which principle resonated most with you. Leave a comment sharing the one Stoic idea you'll take into your week and how you plan to use it. If you found value in walking this path, consider subscribing for more explorations into ideas that help us live with greater clarity and strength. Thank you for your time and your attention. Walk well.